Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Jewish Perinatal Law Summit. I'm Dr. Amy Barron, and we are starting Program 3. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it off to Rabbi Balto.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope we all look at this as not only being an important summit, but also the beginning of an education and dialogue process. This is an opportunity for us to raise these issues. This is actually the first conference held on these issues since 2010. And we're not going to stop just with this conference. We're going to continue to bring attention to these issues and bring a dialogue on what families need here. We're blessed by having a number of supporting organizations that are helping us put this together. The supporting organizations are, besides Amy's excellent organization, Nechama Comfort, which is led by Riva Judas, who's joining me as the co-moderator today, National Council of Jewish Women, OHEL, and Our Love Continues. Amy?
And we have to we have to, because they're incredible organizations as well. We have a number of supporting organizations that we wanted to speak to you about just very quickly. The National Bikor Cholim Conference, Neshama, the Association for Jewish Chaplains, the Network for Jewish Human Service Agencies, Sviva, Plaza Jewish Community Council, Ritual Well, Kavod V'Nachum, and Shomer Collective. And I must say, Rabbi Balto, this conference, this summit would not be taking place without you and your wife, because this financially, your generous support has enabled this conference to be put on. And we are all, it's not just me, we are all incredibly grateful. Okay, so tonight, I'd like to read to you a passage, actually an excerpt from an article that I was just sent by one of the members of the Us to Have a Baby community. This is from Dr. Rachel Rosenthal, who holds a PhD in rabbinic literature at the Jewish Theological Seminary. She's a professor of Talmud there. And she wrote this piece last week. Here's an excerpt, and I think it really frames exactly what we're trying to do here tonight. She had a miscarriage about a month ago, in the last month, and this is an excerpt from her piece. One of the strange things about mourning a miscarriage is that it is often invisible. There's no ritual for it. There's no funeral, no shiva, no kaddish, no yortzeit. None of these would feel right anyway. Shrodi, that's how she called her baby, Shrodi wasn't a baby. He wasn't a person. He was only the possibility of one. And yet, he is the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning. And the loss of him is with me, just as his presence was with me during those 4 short weeks. If the other 5 pregnancies I have lost are any indication, his mark on me will remain long after the bruises from the shots and the blood draws that dot my arms, stomach, and back fade. Shrodi would have been due on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. He will not be there, and yet he will be with me. I will be in Shul synagogue without him, but with him, aware of what isn't and what could have been. Rabbi Balto.
So the purpose of today's panel is to deal with the struggle that so many of us face, where there are no rituals to express our grief, where we are placed in a position of silence, a position that isolates us and increases the pain. I mean, I'm sure so many of us in this call have that feeling of and noting forever the day a baby that didn't occur would have been due. To help us deal with this real ritual gap, and it is a tremendous ritual gap, we have 2 of the best speakers I can imagine. First, Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin, who is the founder of the Pregnancy Loss Support Program of the National Council of Jewish Women. And Nina wrote this, Tears of Sorrow, Seeds of Hope, a Jewish spiritual companion for infertility and pregnancy loss. And even though this book is over 20 years old, it still stands forth as a really a beacon of wisdom that's really helpful for families facing with these situations. Rabbi Janet, she's joined by Rabbi Janet Madden, who's a hospice, hospital, and congregational rabbi. She's a poet. She knows how to go and create rituals that really speak to the heart, and has done that in so many areas. And she's coming up with a book soon on creative Jewish rituals. I'm joined as moderator with Riva Judas, and I'm really proud to participate in anything with Riva, who created Nechama Comfort to help families dealing with perinatal loss. And she's going to talk about that groups that we've mentioned, but it's really a terrific organization for helping families dealing with these issues. One last thing before we start, we're going to be in the territory of ritual, and we're not going to be talking about halacha. For halacha questions, consult your spiritual advisor. But we're not offering opinions about halacha. So with that, let me turn things over to Janet and Nina, and bring us into that special sacred place where we can share our feelings, thoughts, and prayers.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Balto. We wanted to start with a kavanah, an intentional meditation that will help us all focus on this common gathering that we have and why we're here, and open our hearts to the conversations that we're going to have. Harachaman, compassionate one, be with us as we gather here to join our hearts and intentions, so we may weave together a web of support and know that in our pain and loss, we are not alone. May we create a Sukkot Shalom, a safe shelter of peace, so we might see what others might not see, hear what others might not hear, dare to speak what others might not speak, and so bring us all closer to a place of healing.
Riva, do you want to pose the first question?
On mute. Okay, so let's start a discussion for tonight. Again, thank you so much for organizing this event, for all the participants. Rabbi Cardin and I met many, many years ago, and I think when we had both experienced our losses in New Jersey. And I don't know about you, but I don't know if I could have imagined that such a program would be happening like this. So it really is amazing. So I wanted to ask both Rabbi Matt and Rabbi Cardin, can you tell us about your backgrounds? What brought you into this space? Rabbi Cardin, we could start with you.
First, I just want to acknowledge that in this gathering are a couple of remarkable colleagues of mine that I haven't seen in so very long. And I want to just mention in particular Rabbi Stephanie Dickstein, who in fact has written about pregnancy loss and the traditions around that. So it's wonderful to see you. Wonderful to see you here. As for me, you know, when I was growing up, young women were cautioned, like, be careful, use protection, don't get pregnant. You know, it's like getting pregnant was the most natural thing in the world. It was a thing that just happened to everybody. And there was an anticipation that becoming pregnant was easy. So when my husband and I chose to start building our family, and we got pregnant right away, which just, you know, just like we were anticipating. And then a couple weeks later, 10 weeks later, 11 weeks later, 12 weeks later, the pregnancy didn't stick. The pregnancy didn't stick. And I was devastated because that wasn't the narrative that I grew up with. The narrative I grew up with was you get pregnant and everything, and you know, everything's fine, everything is good. And I think I was in my, you know, early mid-20s, and it was the first time that I felt my body had betrayed me. And that was, as much as the loss of the child, the sense that my body can betray me, I had betrayed my husband, it was devastating. And on top of that, we then tried again to get pregnant. And 1 month went by, and 2 months went by, and 6 months went by, and 10 months went by, and a year went by, and we were not able to get pregnant. And the doctor said, well, you have to get to like the 13th month before we're going to consider you unable to get pregnant. The 13th month is when I got pregnant, which was great. And I had my first child. That pregnancy was successful. And so I felt, okay, we're back on track with that, that rosy Pollyanna approach to life again. And then we tried to have another child, and I got pregnant. And this one stuck past the 12th week and the 13th week and the 14th week. I went into my middle trimester, my second trimester, and went just for a regular visit to the doctor. And, he said those horrible words that you don't want to hear, which is, I don't hear a heartbeat. So he sent me to the hospital for an ultrasound. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. That wasn't the narrative of my life. That wasn't the narrative that I grew up with. So I didn't even have my husband there with me. I went to the hospital. It was on the table. They did an ultrasound, and I still to this day can't believe what they said. The ultrasound, the ultrasound technician didn't say anything. When the doctor came in and used the ultrasound also and looked, that doctor said to me, "Nope, no baby there," and walked out. So the fact that the first miscarriage came and went, I figured, okay, I can deal with this. That's not my life. I got pregnant again and I had a child, and the second one, like that next pregnancy, didn't work. And the harshness of the medical profession was just stunning. And then of course I had to go to the hospital and have a DNC, and that was very difficult. And even then I thought, okay, maybe I can deal with this. Maybe I can deal with this. But I remember first time that my husband and I got a babysitter after we had that second miscarriage, and I went to a concert and they were playing something about, maybe some of you remember who was the composer, but it was about King David mourning his son Absalom. And I just sat there and I wept. I said, okay, you're not handling this as well as I thought you might have been handling this. And so I decided that I really needed to look for support from my tradition, and didn't find it. As Amy, as you read, could not find the support that I needed from my tradition. So that's when I began this journey.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. And I'm so sorry for your losses, for your children that really live in your hopes and dreams. Rabbi Madden, can you share with us how you got to this space?
So I am a replacement child. I am the prescription that the medical establishment gave to my parents after the death of their first baby. And I knew about this from the time I was very, very small. I was reminded often of the brother who had died before me, and that I was both my parents' joy, and particularly for my mother, I wasn't able to replace what she had lost. So I grew up with that consciousness that I was wonderful and I wasn't quite good enough. I didn't quite fill that need. And truly, my mother mourned her entire life until her death in her 80s, mourned the loss of that first child. But it wasn't spoken about like, oh, there's something the tradition can offer. It was just like, this is what happened to us. So I grew up a little bit oppositionally to my mother. There were many things about my mother that I decided, that wasn't how I wanted to live my life. And so, of course, in my turn, when I began having children and was very successful at having children, and they were healthy, and thank God, and it was wonderful, it was a complete blow to me when I, in my turn, had a fetus die at 7 months. And so that was well along into the pregnancy. And although we did everything that we could, there was a burial, there was a recognition. Honestly, I couldn't look at people's babies for about 2 years without bursting into tears. My sister, who was pregnant at exactly the same time, our babies would have been born within a few weeks of each other. It was even hard for me to talk to her, and hard for her to talk to me. And then I kind of put that aside. And as I went on and became a rabbi and became really, really interested always in working with older people, I found how many older women shared with me their stories that they had been either discouraged from talking about, or that they felt so much shame around, that their bodies had been defective in some way, that they had chosen to have an abortion for whatever reason that they'd never told anyone, that they had partners, spouses they'd never told, children who were healthy that knew nothing about other parts of their mother's lives. It is, I think, to go back to my own mother, it is, I think, something that's carried if there's no place to take it, if there's no place to be heard, if there's no place to be seen. And so that was how I became really interested in opening up the possibility for people to safely talk in a non-judgmental way about their griefs, and in many cases their regrets and feeling of guilt and shame.
Thank you for sharing your story, and I'm sorry for your loss, both your brother and your child. And you make a very good point that we see over the years working with so many families, that you need to express your grief and your journey, and that's why tonight again is so important. And it's never too late to share what you've gone through. So thank you.
Rabbi Madden and Rabbi Carden, can you talk, let's step back a bit. Why is ritual important, especially in this setting when you're dealing with grieving families? Rabbi Madden, do you want to start with that?
I think there are three possibilities with ritual, or maybe four. One is it actually concretizes things that otherwise are just abstract. They're feelings, but there's nothing tactile. So a ritual allows for something tactile. I think it has the possibility of connection, even to something that happened a long, long time ago. That has never really gone away. It can be sort of called up and called forth and acknowledged to be real and true. I think a ritual has the possibility, of course, to be transformative in some way, maybe not even in the moment, but perhaps in the aftermath. I also think that in a tradition so rich in rituals for just about everything, when we come to the moment and there is no ritual for the thing that we need, it's such an additional feeling of bereftness, if I can use that word, such an additional feeling of like, where am I in my tradition? Where am I in this moment? And how do I fit in to a tradition that actually, for as much as we talk about fertility, we talk about infertility for all of our matriarchs. And yet there's nothing concrete within the tradition. People have been left to figure out how best they will handle it as individuals and families. So I think a ritual allows not always healing, not always acceptance, but certainly acknowledgement.
Rabbi Carden.
Well, I certainly agree with all of that. To add a few, ritual does fill a space when we don't know how to fill it. So when we don't have the words to say, when we don't know what to do, when we're feeling all alone, a ritual fills that space, gives us something to do, gives us words to say, embeds us in something larger so we don't feel so alone. It does, as Rabbi Madden says, concretize things, and it makes our feelings, in this particular case, our loss, visible. And what many of us experience with miscarriages, especially when they're early on in the pregnancy. And of course, our tradition, so you don't tell anybody until, after the first trimester. So how do you tell somebody that you lost something that they didn't even know that you had? How do you tell them that your dreams are, your dreams have been dashed when they don't even know that you've been trying? So ritual concretizes it, makes it visible. provides us with something, yes, to hold on to. And when it is built with the building blocks of tradition, it connects us to Judaism over thousands of years and across time and space. So again, we are just, we're not alone. I want to say just one thing about what I found it was interesting about the response to the book that we published, Tears of Sorrow, Seeds of Hope. When I was first responding to my own miscarriage, I could find a prayer in maybe one magazine here, which we could Xerox. When we had to Xerox back then, you couldn't scan it. Had Xerox back then, and I could find something in a magazine over there. And so what I had at first was like a little piece of paper that I had from here, and a little piece of paper over there. And that's otherwise what many of us found that we were looking. What people said to me about the book is that the book itself gave them something to hold on to, that the book itself, because it was published by a publisher and was made public, that the book itself made them feel visible and made them feel like their losses were visible. And that's what ritual does. It makes us feel like we and our losses are visible and that they count and other people care.
Oh, that's really lovely, and I can understand that. Can you you talked about going to the building blocks of tradition. Just offhand, does something come to mind where you relied on sort of the building? I mean, we all know these building blocks in a traditional death really well, but is there something about the building blocks of tradition that you were able to incorporate in one of these, in one of the prayers that you came up with?
So what was astonishing is that the rabbis put some of the prayers that I was looking at in the Talmud. It was not so much about loss, but not about getting pregnant, but Hannah, who so much wanted a child and was unable to become pregnant, and went to Shiloh at the shrine there to ask God for a child. And then Eli the priest chided her, thinking that she was drunk because she was moving her mouth, but no words were coming out. The rabbis filled that space, that she was moving her mouth, no words were coming out. The rabbis filled that space with two prayers for her. I mean, she said, God, you have made angels and you have made humans. Angels don't eat, drink, they don't procreate, and they don't die. Humans eat, drink, procreate, and die. Decide what I am. If I am an angel, then I must live forever. But if I am human, you have to give me a child. And to know that the rabbis of the past were that sensitive to the desire of women to have children, the pain of the loss of not birthing a live child, or birthing a live child and seeing that child die, comforted me and said, okay, I can use my tradition to help. I can use my tradition to help support me. And then, of course, there's always the candles and the lighting of the candles, hoping for comfort, turning a Shabbos candle into something of a memorial candle, a yahrzeit candle. And there are many, many more we can talk. I know Rabbi Madden has some too. I can come back to me. I can talk more about this.
Yeah, Rabbi Madden, do you have a view on that?
Well, one of the things that I learned when I really began digging into this for my first, for my own sake, and later for the people that I serve, is that our Chazal, our sages, have 3 different names for a womb. And one of them is Hamakom, the place, which is also one of the many names for the divine. And that sounds amazing and beautiful and holy and wonderful. And another name is Rechem, of course, the literal word, right? That from which we get Rachamim, right? From which we get compassion. And that's really beautiful. The third name is Kever, grave. And I was blown away by that. And I guess part of it was to realize that the rabbis themselves grieved likely the same losses that we grieve. How would they not? And that the expectation that that a pregnancy will occur, or that a pregnancy will occur and result in a live, healthy child, is so much of our time. So much not of our tradition, but so much of our own time and our own expectations, when in general, we have come to believe that there's a fix for that. There's something we can do for that. There's a treatment for that. And I think of so many people who, I love Hannah's image, right? There are no words, the mouth moves, but the words don't come out, in terms of how do you explain to people who are just like, have assumptions that, of course, IVF will work for you, or of course this will work for you. How do you try to tell people, no, it didn't, it hasn't, or that the prescription that brought me into the world doesn't always work for everyone, and that the abortion that was either a medical necessity, or a psychological, emotional, spiritual necessity, with the expectation, the assumption that someday when I'm ready, I'll be able to have another child, that isn't always true. So there's something for me about holding all of this together that our tradition offers us. I don't know that it's always comforting, but I think it always grounds us in the reality that we are not very different from our ancestors, and we have a strong understanding of this kind of pain baked in.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me, we're not going to talk, we're not going to discuss the halakha. By the way, we're putting together resources which we'll put on a website of all of the kinds of rituals that are coming up, and also articles about halakha. Now, the traditional view was that you really didn't mourn the loss of a child who was less than 30 days old. And we started off this program hearing from Rabbi Alon about how he and his wife couldn't secure Tahara and Shmira from the community Chevra Kadisha for their stillborn child. Tell me about, there's a gap here. Tell me about, what the impact of that gap is, and how communities should think about responding to that. Janet, do you want to, Rabbi Madden, do you want to start?
So I have been working for the last couple of years, and what I have come up with is it's a small book. It's a short book. It's certainly not the most definitive thing, but I think there are two things. One is to understand how the halakha developed and why it developed the way that it did. And I believe halakha comes definitely from a place of compassion, and that in the 21st century, we have different social realities and different expectations, that people are not always comforted by the fact that if your embryo, your fetus, it's lovely to hear the medical terms, but you know what? When it's in your body, it's your baby. That's the reality. I don't know anybody who says, I'm carrying an embryo, or I'm carrying a fetus. I know people who say, I'm carrying a baby. We're having a baby. And so the gap for me is, it's languaging. The gap for me is the really understanding, the deep understanding in our tradition that life is precarious and life is uncertain, and our ancestors knew it. And we have, I think, not the same orientation. We just have different experiences and expectations and images that are flashed before us, that we can have whatever we really, if we truly, truly want it, we can somehow make it happen. So I think that's part of for many people, where this struggle, this gap is really grounded.
Rabbi Cardin?
So I want to share two texts from the Talmud, which I think helps ground me in why I think there's a great opportunity to create traditions, new traditions within the old tradition. One of these texts is from the tractate Nida, which actually has to do with women's fertility, actually. And it says, a day-old son who dies is to his father and mother like a full bridegroom, right? The tradition recognized that a day-old baby, a neonate, is, just as Rabbi Madden was saying, a full-born child, a full-blown child in the minds and the hearts of the parents. The tradition knew that. The tradition knew that. And the tradition says to comfort those parents who lost children, what does God do in the heavenly realm? God sits and teaches the little children who have died. Right? So that your child wants to say your child is being held in the presence and in the arms, in the lap, of God. So when you see that in our tradition, you say, okay, they get it. The tradition wants to acknowledge the losses that we feel. And if we haven't preserved those traditions that have come down through the ages, then it is certainly up to us to now respond that way. By the way, I will say something perhaps heretical, but I can't believe that over 3,000 years, 2,000 years, 1,000 years, Jewish women didn't have traditions around these experiences already. I just think they weren't captured. We don't necessarily know about them, but I'm sure that they were there in some way. And so what we are doing now is recreating what our ancestors surely must have done, because they experienced these losses as well. So I think that this is actually a time for us to be bold and explore and explain to our congregations and our communities what we need. I know some congregations, some JCCs have created gardens, sort of collective gardens of mourning and acknowledgement of loss for miscarriages, for neonatal death. And there are beautiful gardens, with bushes, perennials, annuals. Sometimes some of the traditions say, plant an annual for the child that you lost and perennials for the children that you might have. And then you celebrate, in a sense, the potential beauty of even the annuals, and then you mourn, obviously, when the annual dies. But that is the trajectory of that child that you didn't have. Others say plant perennials for all of them, so that you can always go back and remember and see them. And I think that makes sense as well. There's no right or wrong here. It's what speaks to you most. But I understand the perennials too, because I can remember for as long as I had children in my home, I was blessed with having other children. Whenever I would gather up all the children and get them in the car, take them someplace, I always felt like there were two children who were missing. So that, I'm almost 70. I'm still tearing up. The pain does endure, but the traditions and the rituals can help us say our pain is being held by our community, and we are being held by our community.
Thank you.
I want to jump back in for just one moment to just really lift up what you're suggesting. And that is that not having rituals is also very freeing and really blows open the door of possibility for us to say, what is it that we need now? And opportunities for individuals, couples, communities, with or without an officiant, to be able to do things themselves, to do things in families. And I love what you said before. It's never too late to acknowledge these losses. I saw Mark, I think it was said in the chat, this is the definition of ambiguous grief. This is the definition of disenfranchised grief, when you have no place to put it. So I also say, what a beautiful opportunity. When the awareness gets lifted up, then the creativity can begin to blossom.
I know one woman who created a 40-page booklet to mark her miscarriage. She did it at the time of Kiddush Levana, when you go out and you bless the waxing presence of the moon. She had her friends gather. It was a profoundly important and complex ritual. And I know others who have a paragraph that they recite, and that's all that they need. And I think we also have to say there are some who choose not to mark their loss with a ritual, and that's okay too. We all mourn in our own ways, and there's no one right way to do it. But what we do want is to make sure that our communities provide us with the alternative ways of recognizing our loss. And I think that's, Rabbi Balto, what you were saying before. That was the question I think that you were asking before. Like, how do we get our communities to focus on this? And I think there have to be ways that the rabbis speak about it, that there are gardens and congregations, that there are candles that we can use to mark this, that around holidays, especially holidays that we organize around children, we have to acknowledge the losses and the absences that are there, and we are still struggling to find those ways. I mean, the recognition in the blog that Amy started us with says there are no traditions, there are no rituals for miscarriage, and yet we've been at this for at least 25 years, if not much longer. So there is opportunity, as Rabbi Madden was saying, and we don't have all the answers, but we have to continue speaking about this as we do here. We have to make it visible.
Yeah, and it's hard, and Reva and Amy know this vastly better than, because they're dealing with families all the time, know this vastly better than any of us. But it's held in silence. I mean, we don't voice it, and that just makes it so much more painful for the families. Reva, do you have a question?
Yes. Rabbi Carden, I wanted to know, we've talked about different ideas about rituals and communal rituals. Could you share with us, if you don't mind, some of your personal rituals that you started to do, that you felt that either you took from existing tradition or something that you've created in honor of your children?
My ritual was creating the book. My ritual was finding what others were doing, talking to other women, talking to other families, gathering their rituals, in a sense, living through the knowledge, the learning of their rituals. It's building rituals are very, very personal. So most of my ritual was in the gathering of rituals and putting together this book and finding a publisher. Which, by the way, sitting down and talking with others, reaching out to others who have these losses, if that comforts you, that totally comforted me. Rabbi Elan, I know that you're here too. I see you. You're listening to your stories was both heartbreaking and in some sense comforting, because there's someone else voicing these losses so powerfully. And just knowing that you are there was really quite embracing in that regard. The one thing that I have done is, I can't believe I'm tearing up after all these years, was I lit a candle. And I started lighting candles for every member of the family. So with the 2 miscarriages, I would light an additional candle for them as well. I don't do that anymore. At some point, and I can't tell you exactly when, I said, it's okay. They are still with me. I think of them. I don't need this anymore. And I just had the candles for the live children in the family. But I did light those candles on Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, so that they would burn that evening, and they would always be with me, and their memory would always be with me that way.
So beautiful and so honest, and of course you're tearing. I think that you talked about discussion and sharing in evenings this, and I think that is an important ritual. I'm tearing also. So and I think that's healthy. I think that's what a beautiful ideas you've shared with us. Thank you.
Rabbi Madden, you spoke for a while about your experience as a chaplain and hearing the pain that people that still lives with people about the losses they've suffered. Um, can you elaborate a little more about that? And I understand you have a prayer of coming to peace, and I'd appreciate if you could share that with us.
So I want to say that part of being a chaplain, there's a lot of training, as you well know. We are not trying to fix anyone. We are not trying to bring anyone to acceptance. People may or may not accept their situations, their lives, their experiences. What I try to do with people is once they are willing to tell me their stories, I take that as a truly sacred. And that my task is to be that compassionate, non-judgmental presence, maybe the first person that they've ever been able to share this with, or maybe they've shared it many times. But it's not about what I might be feeling myself. So I try really, really hard to just create a safe, non-judgmental, patient, loving presence. And usually I'm mentally blessing the person for the courage to tell the story as they're speaking. When I ask people, what is it that you need, or what is it that you want? Sometimes they'll say, pray for me. And I'll say, well, tell me what you would like me to pray for. And once the person begins to tell me what they think they need me to do for them, we quickly realize that they are praying for this for themselves. Many people are not praying for acceptance. Many people are not praying for forgiveness. Many people are not praying for another opportunity, especially, people who've been carrying these losses for a very, very long time. They're not praying that they may have a child again. I think what they're really, truly praying for is coming to some kind of peace within themselves, around their bodies, around their minds, around their relationships, around, how much do they feel that they need to share, and how much can they be contented with saying, now that I've spoken about it, that is all I needed. It's a little bit like what Rabbi Cardin said about lighting the Shabbat candles. Rituals are sometimes, sometimes they no longer serve us well. And when they're no longer serving us, it's appropriate to just let them go. I personally process a lot of what people talk to me by a spiritual practice of doing a lot of handwork. And one of the rituals that I created, which is not exactly what you asked me, but just a little bit sideways here, is almost anybody can weave. Almost anybody can learn to weave. And I've created an entire ritual around weaving and leaving an intentional hole in the fabric, so that there is the recognition of what is not as well as what is. And in terms of a prayer, often what I will ask the person, some people don't have a prayer practice. They just don't. Some people say, will you pray for me? Other people say, I don't know how I feel about a God who denied me children. I don't know how I feel about a God who took my baby or my babies, because many people, it's not one miscarriage. Many people, it's multiples. And so what I have offered people is this very short little reading. And I asked them if they would like to read this. And if not, would they like to have a copy of it to perhaps read later? So this is what I came up with. I need to say this aloud. I am sad. I am angry. I am bewildered. I am in pain. I am not all right, even as others praise my positive attitude. I cannot forget my loss. I do not want to forget my loss. Compassionate presence, bless me to practice self-compassion for my fragile body and my crushed spirit. Help me to refrain from self-blame. Lift shame and guilt from me. Be with me in my heartbreak. Bring me to a place of peace.
That's really lovely. You know, that,
I I would love to, we're not doing, prayers here, but I want to emphasize what Rabbi Madden just said, and I want by reading a little bit of a poem meditation that Merle Feld wrote years ago, and that is, sometimes we're just not ready for the ritual. Sometimes we're not ready for comfort. Sometimes we just are sitting with that pain and that anger. And Merle Feld, just who also suffered a loss, captured, I think, her just the intensity of feelings that just roiling up in her by saying, "Nothing helps. I taste ashes in my mouth. My eyes are flat, dead. I want no platitudes, no stupid, shallow comfort. I hate all pregnant women, all new mothers, all soft babies." And she goes on. And that is, in a sense, I think, her ritual. That is what she needed at the moment. That is what so many of us need sometimes when we are feeling that rawness. And people do, Rabbi Madden used to say, try to rush in and comfort us. And sometimes before we're ready for ritual, we need to be able to express our dismay, our anger, our sense of our bodies betraying us, why there is joy in the world when all we see is darkness, because the loss is all consuming. So yes, to be able to say those harsh things until we're ready to start being comforted is really very important.
Rabbi Madden and Rabbi Cardin, both of you have mentioned your body betraying you. And I was wondering if there were how do you deal with that, and whether there were specific rituals that might assist one where, you have a feeling of, as a woman, I should be capable of this, and your body betrays you.
So what rituals to respond to that? Is that what you're saying? I will answer the mikvah. If you have a tradition of going to the mikvah, please consider using the mikvah as a way to forgive your body, renew your body, emerge with the heart, with the hard feelings, and try to reemerge, saying, okay, trying to be more at peace with it. If you haven't ever been to the mikvah, please go with someone, a ritual bath, please go with someone who can help you try to experience that as a way of truly finding ways of newness. I use the mikvah in that regard, after my miscarriages, as a way to heal my connection to my body. I think that's one way. Rabbi Madden, what about you?
So I think Kriya is one of the most underappreciated rituals that we have, traditional ritual. And I think that act of tearing, to me, because I'm 100% with you, that I found that I was not ready to immerse in mikvah. I didn't want healing waters surrounding me. I wanted to rip the world apart. And so, because, delivering a dead baby is just like, it's just not what you imagine your body doing. And so even that act felt like everything about my body felt that it had betrayed me. So I found tearing Kriya really, really helpful. But I also would say that when ready, the non-traditional use of mikvah for me as an immersion in a place of despair, really in a place of loss. There are many, there is a network across the country, Ma'im Chaim, yes, of course. And then there's a network of mikvaot across the country that are not purely for nida, not purely for halakhic purposes, also open to innovative rituals and, shall we say, like alternative uses besides just halakhic uses. I think that when ready, there is something about being held in the womb of mikvah that feels right when the body is ready. I think that there are many other rituals. I love flying wish paper. I love the idea. I wanted to burn things down and burn things up and smash things and break things. And there are many modalities out there that can be harnessed for that. Sometimes you need to build a fire. Sometimes you need to break something, breaking a plate, breaking a dish, breaking a glass can be incredibly therapeutic. And even though it may not be a traditional ritual, or it may be a traditional ritual that we are reinventing and using again, so that instead of breaking the glass at your wedding, now you're saying, like, I really get it. I really get what it feels like to start off with certain expectations and have smashed expectations and reenact that with my body. So for me, there were things like that that were helpful, and I dare say for others too.
I want to add just one other thing. Deborah Nussbaum Cohn, when she suffered a miscarriage, created a ritual around baking challah, because she saw an analogy between, when they say buns in the oven, right? She saw an analogy between the dough rising in dark places, and then coming to fruition, and her a pregnancy. But her pregnancy, of course, didn't come to fruition. But what she described is making the dough. And I think what she didn't say, but I think, at least I don't remember her saying this, but maybe part of this was in kneading the dough. I think that physicality of kneading, in a sense, with, I think in some measure, Rabbi Matt, potentially anger, it was like her tearing without being destructive. It was like constructive anger release in this dough and this kneading, and then the braiding and the working of it. And having this sort of sympathetic visioning of, in fact, yes, there should have been a baby. I mean, Amy, your organization's name is really very powerful. And so she ended up having this bread that sort of reflected what her dreams were. But in the meantime, she also took out some of that frustration and anger. I hope I'm representing her accurately. That's what I took away from what she taught me about what she did.
And it's interesting, the other motions, the braiding things together, and also standing back and just taking the time and watching things rise. So if either Rabbi Cardin or Rabbi Madden, any other thoughts about rituals that have worked?
Well, I'll go back to the weaving ritual for just a moment, because I personally am very tactile. I'm a quilter. I'm an embroiderer. It's very important for me. And making a memorial piece that has some kind of realness to it. There's something to show for this. Maybe that for some people the challah works, but then the challah is consumed and there's still nothing, So for me, I know some people do mosaics and some people paint and some people do calligraphy. But for me, I've done workshops with people. Just you can make a loom out of a piece of cardboard, and you can pick your colors of yarn or ribbon or whatever. And you can have something where either one person does it, family does it together, a community does it, and then you can hang it. You can use it as a bookmark. You can, when you're ready, decide it no longer serves you. But there's something about the lack of tangibility for me that needed to be addressed. I need something tangible. So I guess that's my best answer to that. Obviously, everything is transitory. I'm not trying to say that it's not, but there's something for me reassuring and calming about making something.
Let me riff off of that. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, there actually was a folk Jewish tradition of yard site art, where in fact an artist, this is very folk-ish, but an artist would, just a non necessarily non-trained artist, just anyone who wanted to make this piece of art would in fact make a piece of art with the name, the date of the art site, some visuals that was conjured up by remembering that person through their name or memories. And then you hang it up, right? And then it's there. It is a, as you say, sort of a physical representation of that memory. I don't know anyone who has done that, but I can imagine if we want something tactile, like you say, Rabbi Madden, to create a yard site art piece that you can then display in your home if you wish. Put it someplace where it's sacred for you, where it's safe for you. But yes, that we can do those things. And again, that could be a ritual expression, especially if you're artistic, for how to capture the loss and to preserve it and to make it something that is present. But again, I want to sort of reiterate what I think we've been trying also to express throughout. There are so many different ways that one can, in fact, craft a ritual to meet your needs at the time that is right for you. There's no one way to do it, which has its benefits because there's a freedom there. It also has benefits because you can choose from the elements. That's called the building blocks of tradition, so that it connects you to the past, connects you to the tradition while it speaks specifically to you. So we're in a special historic moment where we can do those things.
Well, that's actually a good introduction to the next part of our program. I think that we've heard just a tidbit of types of rituals that we can do, both communal and individual. I remember when we first started the Nechama Comfort, and we were part of a larger program at our local hospital. October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and we would have a program. We every year we would create a piece of a quilt, and the quilt would come together. We lasted about 8 years. And if you go to the hospital, there's a room, you have to find the room, but there's a room where the quilts are hanging. And that's similar to traditions, what you have said. On a personal note, I created a bracelet with my children's names on it, including my son's name. And now I'm blessed with grandchildren, so I'm continuing the bracelets. So I think there are so many examples, and I think I would love, we would all like to ask you, the audience, to share rituals that you have put into your life, or things that we made you think about, or something that you've thought about and said, I'm going to do this. And, it could be as simple as taking a tradition that we already have, lighting, like you said before, Rabbi Cardin, the Shabbos candle, or lighting a yahrzeit candle like we do in memory of any loved one, or saying Yitzhak or Kaddish. It could be as simple as continuing a tradition as well. So I wanted to open up, if everybody could share with us their rituals that they do, or things that they would like to do, or questions about how to go about it. And just to type it into the chat, and Rabbi Bolton and I will read some of them. So
By the way, Juliet Gardner from Berkeley talks about a yard site, a Yizkor ceremony, I think, for babies who are lost. That's something we'll look at. So.
I know some of you have shared already some of the rituals that you've done. Let me see.
Rabbi Glazer and his wife Sherry. Sherry's made a mosaic piece that
took
a full year of mourning to create. It's really beautiful. You can see it on their Facebook page, and it's a backdrop to their Shabbat candles. And she also created a Havdalah ceremony to mark the transition of ending Shaloshim and re-entering into the community. And Havdalah is a wonderful thing to think about leaving a sacred time and going into a less sacred time, and yet trying to keep some of the intimacy and sweetness of the sacred time.
Let's see. Sherry also wrote, I wear our son's birthstone on my necklace. And we just passed that one. She also has a birthstone on a necklace. And Rabbi Elon said they hosted people in their home on the yard site of their child.
We didn't mention song. That's true. I remember Rabbi Elon spoke a lot about the song. I think that's something also that music can transport us and certainly enter our heart when the words don't. So Rabbi Elon, thank you for that.
Can I ask, so for me as a chaplain, when I'm in situations with bereaved families, I always try to emphasize that they are and have been parents for when the child was inside the mother. I think it's nice to go back to how they connected with the child then. So, did they sing to the child? Did they talk to the child, and just perhaps continuing that in some fashion?
I think it's also taking, being individual. I know that if there's other living children already when the baby passes away, or for the future children, I know that people have taken other family members and they've painted and created rocks, that they created a rock garden in their own house, or they brought it to the cemetery, to the matzeva, to the headstone, and have put the rocks, or maybe put them in the shape of a heart. They've done that. I know a family that on their vacations, the couple, wherever they go, they will pick up a momentum, something from nature, a seashell, a leaf, and they will create it and share it with their baby at the cemetery. They have created a little box where they have sort of put their child into their life and takes the baby with them on their trips, and then shares the momentums with them as well. Sherry wrote, we are included our wedding glass.
But picking up on Riva's point, think about, keeping talking about the child who wasn't born. And Kendra Labowitz writes about this wonderfully in her blog Ronan's Torah, of how they treat the child as certainly as a member of the family. And think about when those children grow up and somebody says to them how many brothers and sisters you have, and they include that child as a brother or sister, and how that may change the way we look at being able to talk about these losses.
I couldn't find anyone, so I went to a pagan ceremony with friends and took my surviving twin to speak to our beloved dead a few months after the birth. It helped a lot to have a chance to speak to my baby, and I felt like I could let the guilt go. And I think that's so important for everybody on an individual level. I know that we work with our families at Nechama Comfort. What's going to speak to you? How are you going to incorporate your child into your life? And I think, the Shabbos candles one way, the birthstone we said, having a place to speak to your children in a way. And I think that's what's important too. Anybody else sharing?
I wonder if it's time for us to pull up. Um, by the way, we're going to really try to assemble and put on the website a lot of these rituals that we've been talking about. And also, by the way, Mayim Chaim has a book called Fertility Journeys, which does this really remarkable job of telling the stories. It's not sort of like ritual, ritual, ritual. It does it from the perspective of our matriarchs and tells their stories and then comes up with rituals. It's really a fascinating book. So shall we turn to our pencils and paper and instruction from our rabbis about our own creation of a ritual?
So this is when I'm going to ask you to just take a piece of paper and something to write with. And we want to take this moment to seriously, this is not just a practice, this is a real ritual. And take this moment to just kind of invoke the sacredness of being in community and of acknowledging whatever you are carrying or have carried. And this is a ritual of locking or unlocking, depending on what you need. And I do believe the best rituals are either or, both and. They're neither just one thing or another. So the purpose of our ritual is to ritually acknowledge your grief related to perinatal loss. It might be on your behalf. It might be on behalf of the people you serve and work with. Might be on behalf of a sister, a cousin, a friend. Truly, I don't know if I know anyone. I don't know if I know a woman who has not experienced something of this loss across the spectrum of life. But maybe you're one of the very, very few who have not had this experience, but you're holding a lot of compassion for someone else. You also are invited. So our text comes from the Babylonian Talmud, from Ta'anit, Tractate Ta'anit 2a. And I should say that this ritual will be made available to everyone after the program, so there's no need to write all of that down. But I'm going to read a text to you, and I'm going to ask you to just maybe even close your eyes and listen to the text as I'm reading it. And I'll read it twice. Rabbi Yochanan said, "There are 3 keys maintained in the hand of the Holy One, blessed be he, which were not transmitted to an intermediary. That is, God tends to these matters, God's self. And they are the key of rain, the key of birthing, and the key to eternal life." So I'll read it again. Rabbi Yochanan said, "There are 3 keys maintained in the hand of the Holy One, blessed be he, which were not transmitted to an intermediary. That is, God tends to these matters, God's self. And they are the key of rain, the key of birthing, and the key to eternal life." So now we'd like you to consider for a moment your relationship specifically to the key of birthing. And in that consideration, we're going to ask you to take your writing implement and draw a key on your piece of paper. It can be small, it can be large, it can be any shape or size. Take a moment and draw your key. And as you finish drawing your key, consider your need. What do you need to lock or unlock in this moment? Always subject to change, but what now in this moment do you need to lock or unlock? And now write your intention, which might be in the form of a prayer, it might be a series of statements, it might be words. Now write your intention either above your key, below your key, around your key, or inside your key. That key that can either lock or unlock depending on your need. So this is your key. You need never show it to anyone. It's your personal key. And the question now is to ask yourself, how will this key best serve me? If it's a key that you would like to carry with you, you can fold it up and put it in your wallet. You can put it in a bag, you can put it in your pocket. Because it's carrying not just the image, but it's carrying your intention, your prayer, your hope. If you feel that your key best serves you by having a resting place, mindfully choose the right place for your key. It might be a jewelry box. It might be a keepsake box. It might be a drawer. If the time comes that one day you realize this key no longer is necessary, it's no longer of service to you, then bury it. Take it outside, dig a hole and bury it in the ground. Put it inside a pot where a plant grows. Allow it to just return to the earth. In acknowledgement that the mysteries of life and death are in the hands of the Holy One.
That was really precious, Rabbi. Thank you so much. Wanted to give people a chance to, if they have specific questions for Rabbi Madden or Rabbi Cardin, to feel free to ask them.
I just want to add to what Rabbi Madden just did. It was so beautiful. In the Italian Jewish tradition, they took that teaching about God not giving over the key of life to anyone, and holding it God's self. And they actually made little keys. You talked about tactile things. They made little keys about an inch long, that women who were pregnant or who seeked to be pregnant would wear around their neck or around as a bracelet. So they literalized, right? They made real that concept of a key, and that helped serve as an amulet for them in those times of pregnancy. So it's a very powerful prayer, very powerful image.
So thank you so much, Rabbi Madden and Rabbi Cardin. I have rarely experienced something that is quite as moving and really touches the soul as your presentation today. And I'm extraordinarily grateful, not only for your words today, but your continued work to try to find ways to help all of us find the path to wholeness. I wanted to give one of our sponsors, Riva Judas, a chance to talk about her organization. You know, this is an area where, you know, I think we should be very proud of a number of people who've just basically seen a problem, picked up the, you know, and just said, what do I need to do to solve things? What do I need to do to go and help the community, you know, find answers to problems they face? And Riva and Amy are great examples of that. So Riva, can you tell us a few words about your organization, Nechama Comfort?
Thank you, Rabbi Walter. Wow, it seems so easy, but it really has been a journey. Our firstborn son passed away 35 years ago. And as Rabbi Cardin said, we still feel the pain. But I saw there was a need, both in the secular world, there was very little that was happening in those days. And then focusing on the community that I knew, the Jewish community. So Nechama Comfort today is a global organization. We're in every continent except Antarctica. We help both the dad and the mom, both partners who have lost the baby. We have individual case managers that work with the families. We work with the entire Jewish community, from the unaffiliated couple searching for some help, all the way to the ultra-Orthodox couple. We also have weekly support groups that we have virtually. And I guess fortunately or unfortunately, to witness people from all aspects of their faith, of their religion, coming together, sharing peer-to-peer, developing friendships with each other, where it just matters to go through their grief journey together, is a statement of how important we need to have our support. And the Nechama Comfort helps guide these families, giving them the tools to help them to put their children, because they are their children, into their lives and to move through it. You can't just move past it. You have to really go on their grief journey. We help with the burials. You know, if we're familiar with your area, we try to connect you to the Chevra Kadisha, to the cemeteries, who will be there to help with the rituals, help with the actual ceremony, actual logistics. All of our services are free of charge, and we offer this so that families should never, ever feel alone. In addition, we realize the importance, as we do tonight, of community. So we go into Jewish communities and we offer presentations, again, guidance and tools, how you, the community, the family, the friends, can support the couple that's going through the loss of early miscarriage through the age of 1, as well as doing training for all rabbinical students, medical personnel, and funeral directors. And we're there. You could, people reach out to us how to help them, on the first short site, how to help them 10 years down the road. We recognize the grandparents, the siblings, the children, future children. So we invite you to reach out. Our information, you can look at our website, nechamaComfort.org, follow us on social media. And it's never too late, as we have said, to recognize your child who only lives in your hopes and dreams. So thank you all tonight for helping these families never to feel alone.
Thank you so much, Riva. And Riva is really the kind of person you can call at 11 o'clock at night with a sudden emergency, where you're in the middle, you're in the middle of Iowa, and Riva is just a bounty of resources, and she knows how to, help you in these very difficult times. She's reminders. We're going to gather resources, look for that arriving on a website. We're going to send out a recording of this program. And the National Bikur Cholim Conference starts on March 13th. And one of the topics that some of us have, that some of us mentioned, were ambiguous loss, were the problem, dealing with the grief of a long duration. And our keynote speaker is the expert on the subject, Dr. Pauline Boss, who really developed the field of ambiguous loss. And her recent book, The Myth of Closure, which is a New York Times bestseller, really helps to discuss and illuminates, our sometimes misguided assumptions that grief somehow should have an expiration date when grief never really does have an expiration date. So I hope you can join us for those programs. Let me turn things back over to Amy because we're not leaving yet.
Thank you. Everyone, we are so glad that you gathered here tonight. Rabbi Cardin, Rabbi Madden, Riva, and Rabbi Balto, thank you so much for all of your words of wisdom, of comfort, of inspiration, and of support. I think so, there were so many beautiful comments in the chat about how people really felt held by the rituals that you closed us out with the kavana from the beginning, and the different pieces that you brought to us in the course of this talk. So we thank you. And to all of you who have been with us from the beginning, this is just the beginning. We've had some conversations before at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, but it is important for us as an organization to partner with and work with all different kinds of Jewish fertility organizations and individuals who want to bring these resources and these topics to the fore, because we all know it's either we're struggling with them or it's someone that we know, just as the speakers spoke about so beautifully tonight. So thank you so much for being here. Again, this program is being recorded. It will be sent out in the next few days. If you don't have it by the end of the week, you will have it by early next week. And I also, just for my own plug, in terms of our programming at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, this is our Perinatal Loss Summit, but we are also doing a global infertility summit coming on May 7th. That's a Sunday, in a little bit more than 2 months. We will be bringing together organizations and individuals from across the Jewish fertility world to speak about all different facets of infertility. Loss will be there, obviously, as well, but the main thrust of that gathering will really be infertility. So look out for that to hit your inboxes. That will be, again, a free program, because it's important for us to make sure that this information gets out there, that people are educated and sensitized to the plights of people who are dealing with fertility struggles. And we want to support everyone who is sitting with this pain right now. So thank you so much for joining us. Our official program is now over. We are now going to stop recording, and then we are going to move into our half an hour-ish processing space. I think Rabbi Madden and Rabbi Cardin are going to say their quick goodbyes, and we're going to move into that space. And anyone who'd like to discuss, talk about any issues, there was one definitely that came up in the chat that we know we're going to get to, but I just want to give Rabbi Cardin and Rabbi Madden a chance to say goodbye.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you all for the work that you're putting into creating new rituals and new traditions so the next generation won't have to suffer the absences that we experienced.
I just really want to echo that. And thank you, Rabbi David Balto, for putting Rabbi Cardin and I together to prepare for this session, and the beautiful ritual that she came up with the key, and then we worked from there, and it was beautiful collaboration. And I sort of found a new friend through this process, which is always beautiful. And before I go, I want to say one thing that was sent to me privately in chat, and this is for really perhaps for this processing space, that in this time, there are those who have had to make really difficult decisions about terminating pregnancies, who feel that kind of requires a separate space and a kind of a sensitivity, that it's maybe a slightly different topic, maybe a topic on its own. So I just wanted to share that it's so true that not every ritual works for everyone. Not every discussion works for everyone. There's no cookie cutter when it comes to loss and grief and pain. So. And again, thank you so much for having me. And I just bless you, Dr. Barron, Rabbi Balto, Riva, for the amazing work that you're, and Rabbi Glazer, for all the amazing work that you're doing in this sphere. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.